On March 6, 1836, the 13-day siege of the Alamo in Texas had come to its bloody head. A fearless fighter who had just traveled all the way down from Tennessee had just spent his last bullet. Instead of surrendering, he whipped out his knife in one hand and the stock of his rifle in the other. He sliced and bludgeoned his way through enemy lines until a bullet pierced his heart and he drew his very last breath. His life ended at the Alamo, but his name was forever immortalized as a nuclear weapon, the Davy Crockett. And you never guess why the weapon actually took his name. In a very poor family, Davy was the fifth child of 9. Their sparse resources were spread thin across the very large family, and a formal education for Davy was out of the question. His family was deep in debt, and young Davy worked all the time to help pay it off. He became a farmer and then a tavern owner, but in both roles his performance was lackluster. He was debt-trapped in jobs he hated. It wasn't until Davy married at age 20 that he had his first taste of success. It tasted a lot like bear meat, and that's because it was. Davy excelled at slaying the massive predator and became renowned for his hunting abilities. He'd track the bear down with his pack of hounds, corner it, and finish it off with his rifle. He boasted, "In less than a year, I've already killed 105 bears." A folk legend was born, and it was sung in the Ballad of Davy Crockett.
Killed him a bar when he was only 3, Davy.
The lyrics pronounce he slayed a bear at the age of only 3, although that's certainly not true. The myth was popular, and Davy Crockett became a role model for young men of the early 1900s. Fast forward to 1947, the Cold War had officially begun. America and its NATO allies found itself staring down the Soviet. Davy Crockett's legend became more than a folk song. It became a weapon, and the weapon solved a problem that nobody had faced before. Europe became the most likely flashpoint for a Soviet-NATO clash. The most vulnerable point? The Fulda Gap, a lowland corridor between East and West Germany where NATO commanders were convinced Soviet tanks would pour through if war ever came. The problem was glaring. NATO was badly outnumbered. 7 US divisions faced down the Soviet 8th Guards Army. Conventional weapons weren't going to cut it. But the massive atomic bombs of the era, the ones dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, weighed 5 tons and required a B-29 Superfortress for delivery. They were useless on a crowded battlefield where NATO troops and Soviet troops were in close proximity. The US needed a weapon small enough for its troops to carry, yet precise enough to eliminate a tank column. They knew a nuclear weapon was the only card in their hands, but their existing nuclear arsenal just wasn't cut out for the task. Drafting started on making a new nuclear weapon. In 1957, the AEC announced, "We have built a sub-kiloton fission warhead small enough to fit inside a shell." The army immediately got to work turning it into a weapon that could be used on the European frontier. By 1961, it entered service under the name the Davy Crockett. The unofficial naming of the weapon ties back to the folk legend behind Davy Crockett, a renowned bear slayer, drawing first blood at the age of only 3. It just so happens that bears are a Soviet political symbol, proudly touted at sporting events. Russia boasts having the largest population of bears in the world. Davy Crockett is undeniably a fitting name for a weapon made to crush the Soviet. And the Davy Crockett came in 2 versions. The 120mm rifle with a range of about 2 kilometers, and a heavier 155mm barrel length with a max range of about 4 kilometers. They both fired the same M388 round, a 34-kilogram shell nicknamed the finned watermelon because of its odd shape and its unpredictable flight path. The shell housed the W-54 warhead inside and possessed an explosive yield equivalent to 0.02 kilotons of TNT. For comparison, the bomb at Hiroshima was equivalent to 15 kilotons of TNT. The W-54 paled in comparison. but this was necessary for such a lightweight and mobile ground-based nuclear weapon. And because of its nuclear attributes, you could have the worst aim in history, miss your target by a couple hundred meters, and still eliminate them. There's a popular misconception that while firing the Davy Crockett, you would seal your own doom, catching yourself and your crew in the blast. But that's simply just a myth I'm about to dispel. The 120mm and 155mm variants are rated at 1.2 miles and 2.4 miles respectively in firing range. At only 0.02 kilotons, the lethal blast radius is well under a mile, safely inside both firing ranges, making both variants of the Davy Crockett technically safe, as long as there's no malfunctions. In the field, a small squad would carry components of the Davy Crockett split into thirds. They were called porta-packs, hiking the components out to wherever a nuclear target presented itself. And according to the manual, the search for targets was to be constant and vigorous. Once you spotted your target, you unload the packs, assemble its tripod stabilizing system, slot in the gun barrel, load the propellant and launching piston, and carefully fit the nuclear projectile onto the front. The warhead wasn't a missile. It was closer to a giant grenade, launched by a burst of conventional propellant transferring force through a piston. The whole thing could also be mounted on a Jeep, with up to 6 warheads stowed in the back for faster repositioning across the battlefield. The nerve-wracking part came before you pulled the trigger, setting the timer dial on the bottom of the Davy Crockett warhead itself. You had a maximum of 50 seconds, and you had to manually calculate the right detonation height. The warhead had no self-detection capabilities whatsoever. If you miscalculated and the round simply thudded into the ground without detonation, the procedure required your squad to wait 30 minutes, then cautiously approach the potentially live nuclear warhead, recover it, and hand it over to weapons specialists. All of this presumably while the Soviet tank clump you just fired a dud nuke at continued its advance. Only 2 live nuclear tests of the Davy Crockett were ever conducted. In July 1962 at the Nevada test site, the first codenamed Little Feller 1, with special guest Attorney General Robert Kennedy in attendance. He was there to evaluate the weapon's effectiveness in combat, along with a handful of top military commanders. The Davy Crockett was fired from a stationary launcher, without its Jeep attachment, and detonated about 6 to 12 meters above the ground for maximum lethality. The launch distance was 2.6 kilometers from the launch location. The Army declared the test a massive success and gave the green light for the production of over 2,100 units of the Davy Crockett weapon system. But enthusiasm faded fast. The Kennedy administration learned of the weapon's limited accuracy, slow assembly, and became skeptical. Commanders in Europe weren't convinced of its practicality, owing to its control structure, which green-lighted sergeants and a crew of 3 privates to fire a nuclear weapon. A decision usually reserved for the very top of command. As one declassified document put it, command and control of the Davy Crockett weapon system is a major problem. There's a real fear that a sergeant will start a nuclear war. And because of this fear, the Davy Crockett weapon system was pulled from Europe in 1967 and retired entirely by 1971, 2 decades before the Cold War even ended. With over 2,100 Davy Crockett units deployed to the most volatile frontier on Earth and placed in the hands of sergeants with the authority to use them, its miraculous World War III wasn't started. Some weapons define an era. The Davy Crockett mostly defined a question, one that took a full decade to answer. Just because you can put a nuclear warhead on a launcher and attach it to a Jeep doesn't mean you should.